of the things would be focusing on urban farming and small mom and pop grocery stores. Another thing that I would like to see in the city is commercial enterprise zones in neighborhoods, like the old Avenue of Fashion, Warren and Cadieux, areas where we still have a dense population, and where we can build synergy around some of the other things that are going on in those areas. I believe the only difference between shopping in Detroit and shopping in Ferndale, Royal Oak, Birmingham, is that in those areas you can park your car and find a purse and shoes and a dress and get a bite to eat and get some ice cream all in the same spot. In Detroit, you have to go to the Fisher Building to get a bag or some jewelry. Then you leave there and then you go on 7 Mile in Livernois to get some shoes, and then you go in the Renaissance Center to get a dress. Then you go downtown somewhere else to eat. So we need to create the same kind of synergy, and what we need to do is provide, the city needs basically a master development plan. And once we decide what kinds of businesses we want in those areas, a small light industrial park for businesses that do business with the medical industry. We have 3 of the largest medical systems right here in the city of Detroit. So we could provide incentives for those kinds of companies to locate right here in the city of Detroit. One that is, I believe, very important is mandatory training for new city council members. Legislators have to go through training. Judges have to go through training. Why wouldn't we mandate new city council members go through training to understand what a $3.6 billion budget actually looks like if you've never seen one? How you analyze that, what an FTE is when you're looking at the budget. What does that mean? How you analyze the different functions within the budget. How to write an ordinance. Most people have never written an ordinance. It's very technical language. The difference between an ordinance and a resolution, which based on my experience on the campaign trail, a lot of candidates don't quite understand that a resolution is not a law. It's basically an opinion. So having mandatory training for new city council members would be number one. It would bring more professionalism, accountability, and it will allow members to hit the ground running day one. Another thing that I think is going to be really important is not just districts. I believe districts will pass. Whether you're for it or opposed to it, I believe it's going to happen. So it'll be very important that the City Charter Commission figure out how to balance the powers so that city council members and districts aren't left to barter with the mayor for city services. Since under our current charter, the mayor has total control over city services. So those are 2 major areas. A third would be the ethics ordinance, strengthening the Board of Ethics and the ethics ordinance. Well, I don't think the ordinance itself has to be strengthened. I think the follow-up and the accountability has to be there. We have to make sure that companies are doing what they've committed to do. 1. 2, we have to make sure they have the resources to do it. One of the things that was supposed to happen when that executive order was put into place was that workforce development is supposed to work with city contractors to identify people who are qualified to do the job. And my understanding is basically what workforce development has done is just taken resumes and farm them out to the different companies. So you get 10 resumes and maybe one person that shows up can actually do the job. We have to do a better job of holding companies accountable, as well as making sure that we're helping Detroiters find jobs at those companies that they're actually qualified to do. No, not off the top of my head. I haven't looked at anything with the intent of trying to figure out what we could privatize, specific contracts that we could privatize or even bring back in-house. I think that's something that will have to be looked at in the context of the entire budget and the discussion about core city services. And I know that that is a problem with many companies. But one of the things, I think with everything, the city has to make sure we're holding people accountable. And one of the ways we do that, we can look at having contract warranties. If you say you can do this job for $10 million, you can't come back halfway through the contract and say, oh my bad, I meant 20 million. $10 million is our agreement. And there are no amendments. There are no add-ons. It's $10 million. And if it's a contract where there is a complete date where you have to deliver by a date, if you don't deliver by that date, then there should be penalties for that company, and you start paying us back money if you don't do what you said you're going to do. So it's not that I support privatization wholesale. It's that privatization has to be considered an option when we're trying to figure out how to eliminate a $300 million deficit. And if we privatize, we have to make sure we're holding companies, private companies, to the same standards that we will hold city employees. I do not believe that at this point in Detroit's history, any one man can fix all the things that are going on in the city and fix what's going on in DPS at the same time. And with platform learning, I worked in, multiple cities across the country, and I saw some that were controlled by the mayor, school systems controlled by the mayor, and school systems controlled by an elected school board. In the cities where it was controlled by the mayor, they didn't have a $300 million deficit when the mayor took over. And in Detroit, we have a deficit in the schools and in the city. So I think we need a mayor who can be focused on getting the city out of this financial deficit right now. And we need to let Robert Bob do what he's doing and see what DPS looks like on the other side of that. But right now, no, it is not something that I can support. My current job at Mariners first, it informs my campaign and my understanding of this community in a couple of ways. One, we get block grant dollars. As you all know, the City Council is the final body that approves block grant dollars. Well, going through that process is very cumbersome. It is very difficult for nonprofits who base their budgets on block grant dollars, and then they get a check a year, 2 years after it's actually been approved. So I have an understanding of how that process needs to be improved at City Council. But the other piece of that is I'm working with homeless, addicted men every single day. So I understand what happens with people in this community when we don't have interventions, when we don't have prevention, if we don't stop the dropout rate at DPS. I understand what that leads to. So my policies, my focus as a city council person will be to address those issues that impact families. I work with men, but our motto is we're saving families one father at a time. Because for every man a Marin is in, that's a woman who has to take care of her kids by herself. That's a senior citizen that doesn't have help around the house. That's a neighborhood, a community that does not have productive men to help us thrive as a city. So it would help drive my agenda in that way.